Welcome to Sparrow's Realm.
Chapter 1. The test lay on the bathroom counter, a thin white stick with one soft pink line. Mira stared at it, her breath unsteady, as if the air itself had thickened. She'd imagined this moment before, laughing, maybe crying, Damien holding her close and whispering that everything would be all right. But instead, the apartment was silent. The clock ticked. The city outside kept moving without her. She sat on the cold edge of the tub, the test trembling in her fingers. Pregnant. The word felt unreal. It should have meant joy, a new chapter. But Damien had been distant for weeks, his text replies shorter, his phone calls rushed. Work, he said. Just work. That evening, she cooked dinner anyway, his favorite. Garlic chicken, jasmine rice, stir-fried greens. She set the table, dimmed the lights, and waited. At 8, she sent a message, "Are you on your way?" No reply. By 9, the food had gone cold. By midnight, she knew. The next morning, his phone went straight to voicemail. By afternoon, his social media accounts were gone. His apartment key still hung on the hook by the door. Mira tried not to cry. She failed. 2 days later, she found an envelope in the mailbox with his handwriting on it. Her hand shook as she tore it open. Mira, I'm sorry. Things are complicated. I need time to fix something. Please don't wait for me. Damien, that was it. No explanation, no call, no promise. She sat at the kitchen table until the light outside turned from gold to gray. The silence felt like betrayal wearing a familiar face. In the days that followed, she went through the motions: breakfast, work, sleep, but inside she was unraveling. She talked to no one. Her friends called, she let it ring. Sometimes she'd reach for her phone in the dark, half expecting him to text, half dreading that he might. When the nausea began, it wasn't just morning sickness. It was grief taking physical form. She'd press her hand to her belly, whispering, "It's okay. You have me. You'll always have me." She found a smaller apartment on the edge of the city, a single bedroom with peeling paint and a view of a narrow street. She sold her designer handbags, her jewelry, her camera. All the things that once meant success now felt like ghosts of a life she couldn't go back to. Her old neighbor, Mrs. Lang, brought over soup. "You're young," she said kindly. "You'll start over. You'll see." Mira smiled because it was easier than explaining how starting over felt impossible when half of you was missing. At night, she'd open her laptop and scroll through old photos, her and Damien at the beach, laughing, sun-drunk and free. He had sand in his hair and his arm around her waist. "I'll never leave you," he'd said that day, simple as breathing. She closed the laptop. It didn't hurt less, but she was learning to live with the ache. 3 weeks later, a friend from work told her Damien had filed for bankruptcy. Mira sat frozen, the words sinking like stones. Bankruptcy? The man who once dreamed of starting his own company, who talked about freedom and building something that lasts. That night, she searched his name online. The results were pitiful: a few old news mentions, and a recent photo that broke her heart. He looked thinner, older. Someone had tagged him in a post about a food delivery job. Mira closed her eyes. "So that's where you went." She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He'd left her, yes, but not for another woman, not for success or adventure. He'd left because he was falling apart. It would have been easier if he'd been cruel. Weeks blurred into months. Mira worked freelance from home, saving every bit she could. The pregnancy book said stress wasn't good for the baby, so she tried to fill her days with quiet things: soft music, herbal tea, sunlight. Sometimes, she'd hum old songs under her breath. One evening, she felt the baby kick for the first time. She gasped, then laughed, tears blurring her eyes. "You're real," she whispered. "You're really here." Something changed then. She still missed Damien, but her love began to shift away from the ghost of what they were, toward the life growing inside her. One rainy afternoon, as she left a grocery store balancing bags in one arm, she froze. Across the street, a man in a food delivery uniform was climbing onto a motorbike. He looked tired, shoulders slumped, hair plastered by the drizzle. But even from afar, she recognized the tilt of his head, the way he adjusted his helmet. Damien. For one dizzy second, she thought of calling out. But what would she say? "I'm pregnant, you coward?" Or worse, "Come home, please." Instead, she watched him drive away, a splash of red taillight fading into the wet street. That night, she sat by the window, hand resting on her belly, and said softly, "We're better off without him." But her voice trembled. Because part of her still didn't believe it. And in the quiet, with rain tapping against the glass, she realized something new: hate was easy. Love, even broken, was the harder thing to let go of. Chapter 2. The months that followed felt like living underwater. Everything around Mira moved: traffic, laughter, the rhythm of the city, but she remained suspended in slow motion. Each morning began the same: she'd wake to the sound of her neighbor's radio, make tea, and tell herself she was fine. The baby was her anchor, the one reason to keep breathing when the world felt hollow. Still, loneliness had a way of seeping through cracks. One afternoon, on her way back from the clinic, she stopped at a traffic light. A delivery rider pulled up beside her car. The helmet, the curve of his shoulders, her pulse skipped. She leaned forward, but before she could see his face, the light turned green. It shouldn't have mattered. But she drove the rest of the way home with trembling hands. That night, she checked her phone again: no messages, no calls. She scrolled through social media, fingers numb. Then, a photo caught her eye. A post by a local food blogger. The caption read, "Even delivery drivers have stories worth telling." In the background of the picture, carrying a stack of delivery boxes, was Damien. Her breath hitched. He looked thinner, older. His jaw was unshaven, and there was a weariness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. But there was no mistaking him. The man who once swore he'd protect her was now delivering food for strangers. Myra's phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. She sat there, staring at nothing, emotions colliding: shock, pity, anger, confusion. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to her heartbeat echo through the room, wondering if Damien ever thought of her, if he knew about the baby. She hated herself for still caring. A few days later, her friend Celeste dropped by with a bottle of juice and that familiar, knowing smile. Celeste had always been the kind of woman who filled a room loud, confident, wrapped in perfume and opinions. "Mira, you look pale," Celeste said, kicking off her heels. "Still worrying about him?" Mira sighed. "I saw a picture. He's working deliveries now." Celeste's painted brows lifted. "Well, that's karma. You can't build love on empty promises." "That's not fair." Celeste gave her a sharp look. "You're still defending him?" "He vanished, Mira. Left you pregnant and alone. You deserve better than some runaway dreamer." Mira looked away, her hand instinctively resting on her stomach. "I know what he did. But I also know what it's like to lose everything." Celeste's expression softened, if only slightly. "You're too kind. That's why people hurt you." Mira smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I'd rather be kind than bitter." Celeste rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She poured juice into 2 glasses, her movements quick, restless. Mira noticed her phone lighting up on the couch, an unknown number flashing repeatedly. "Someone important?" Celeste hesitated. "Work stuff." Mira didn't press, but something about the way her friend's tone tightened made her uneasy. Over the next few weeks, Celeste's visits grew erratic. Some days she was all warmth and laughter, other days, she was jittery, snappish, distracted. Mira caught her once whispering on the phone, voice low, words sharp. When she asked, Celeste brushed it off. "You worry too much. I'm just dealing with a mess at the office." But the unease lingered. Mira started noticing small things: Celeste showing up unannounced, asking strange questions about Myra's finances, hinting at opportunities that felt more like traps. One afternoon, while Mira was sorting baby clothes, Celeste appeared again, her lipstick smudged and her hands trembling. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. "Sure," Mira said cautiously. Celeste glanced around, lowering her voice. "I need money." Mira froze. "What?" "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious." "I'm in trouble. Real trouble." "Celeste, what happened?" Her friend's eyes darted to the window, as if expecting someone to be listening. "Some investments went wrong. I borrowed from the wrong people. Please, just a little help." "You can afford it." Mira swallowed hard. "I'm not sure I can. I've got the baby to think about." Celeste's voice sharpened. "After everything I've done for you? Don't make me regret it." That tone, hard, unfamiliar, cut through Mira like ice. "Is that a threat?" Celeste hesitated. Then her expression cracked, revealing something frantic underneath. "I'm sorry. She exhaled shakily. "I'm scared, Mira." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Mira opened her wallet, pulled out a check, and placed it on the table. "Take this. I can't give more. And please, whatever this is, walk away from it before it eats you alive." Celeste stared at the money, her jaw trembling. "You're unbelievable." Mira gave a tired smile. "So I've been told." When Celeste left, the apartment felt emptier than before. Mira sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker against the rain. Somewhere below, people laughed, cars honked, life went on. She pressed her hand to her belly again. We'll be okay, she whispered. We'll be okay. But her reflection in the glass looked uncertain. Because deep down, she knew something had shifted. Celeste wasn't just a friend in crisis, she was a storm gathering at the edge of her fragile peace. And for the first time since Damien left, Mira felt afraid again. Chapter 3. The next week passed in uneasy silence. Celeste didn't call. She didn't text. Mira told herself it was better that way, but every buzz of her phone still made her heart leap. She tried to focus on simple things: folding baby clothes, making warm soup, reading about childbirth. But something in the air felt wrong, like a faint electric hum before a storm. On Tuesday, a letter arrived. Mira almost ignored it until she saw Damien's name printed faintly in the sender's box. Her stomach twisted. The letter was from a collection agency. It listed debts accounts in Damien's name, some joined under hers. A loan she'd never signed for. A signature that looked eerily like hers, but not quite. Her knees went weak. She sank onto the couch, the papers trembling in her hands. No, she whispered. He wouldn't. But the evidence said otherwise. By evening, she couldn't take it anymore. She called Celeste. The line rang twice before her friend answered, voice tight. Mira. I was going to call you, you knew, Mira interrupted. Didn't you? What are you talking about? The debts. The forged signatures. Someone's been tampering with Damien's accounts. And you were helping him with his business before everything fell apart. There was a pause. Then Celeste laughed, brittle and cold. You think I ruined him? Please. He did that to himself. Mira gripped the phone. You're lying. Am I? Celeste said softly. He borrowed money from anyone who'd lend it. Investors, friends, even me. When I asked him to pay me back, he said he couldn't. Said he was protecting you. That doesn't make sense. Oh, it does. He emptied my savings, Mira. Every cent. So forgive me if I don't weep for your golden boy. Her voice cracked on the last word, a raw tremor slipping through the armor. Celeste. Mira's anger faltered. If he hurt you, I'm sorry. But revenge won't fix anything. Revenge? Celeste's tone hardened again. You think this is about revenge? You have no idea what people are capable of when they're desperate. The line went dead. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. The baby kicked restlessly, sensing her unease. She walked the apartment, whispering lullabies to calm them both. The city outside hummed with life-distant sirens, laughter, the hum of tires on wet asphalt. But inside, the world felt smaller. She opened her laptop, tracing through old messages, receipts, photos, anything that might explain the mess Damien had left behind. That's when she saw it, an email dated months before his disappearance. It was from Celeste. You can't hide this forever. I know what you did. Mira stared at the screen, her heart pounding. The subject line read, Final Warning. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then slowly typed a reply, We need to talk. Tomorrow. No excuses. They met at a quiet cafe the next afternoon. Celeste was already there, sunglasses on, a cup of untouched coffee cooling in front of her. You look tired, she said as Mira sat down. Pregnancy doesn't suit you as well as you think. Mira ignored the jab. You forged my signature. Celeste's lips curved faintly. Prove it. Why, Celeste? What did Damien do to you? For a moment, something flickered across her face, pain, maybe guilt, but it vanished. He took everything. Promised to make me a partner, then shut me out when things went bad. I begged for help, and he disappeared. Just like he did to you. That doesn't justify what you've done. Celeste leaned back, the light catching her rings. Maybe not. But it felt good. Mira stared at her, realization settling heavy in her chest. You're not the same person I used to know. Celeste's smile wavered. Neither are you. For a long time, neither spoke. The air between them buzzed with things unsaid, memories of laughter, shared dreams, the illusion of friendship. Then Celeste whispered, almost to herself, He ruined me, Mira. You just don't know it yet. Mira left the cafe trembling. Outside, the sky had darkened, heavy clouds pressing low. She clutched her coat, walking fast, afraid to look back. When she reached home, her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Ms. Lin, a male voice asked. We're calling regarding your friend, Miss Celeste Wu. She listed you as an emergency contact. Her heart stopped. What happened? There was an altercation outside the cafe you visited. She's been taken to the hospital for minor injuries. Myra's knees went weak. I'll come right away. At the hospital, Celeste lay in a narrow bed, her wrist bandaged. She looked small, fragile, nothing like the woman who'd sat across from her hours earlier. What happened? Mira whispered. Celeste opened her eyes slowly. You shouldn't have come. Someone said there was a fight. It's nothing. Celeste looked away. Just someone I owed money to. Mira exhaled shakily. You need help, Celeste. Real help. Her friend laughed weakly. You think money fixes everything. I think kindness does, Mira said quietly. For the first time, Celeste didn't argue. She just closed her eyes, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. Outside the hospital, night had fallen. Mira stood under the awning, rain misting against her coat. She felt hollowed out, tired of the lies, the debts, the half-truths that had swallowed their lives. She touched her stomach again, the faint movement beneath her palm grounding her. You'll grow up better than we did, she murmured. Kinder. Wiser. Stronger. Behind her, thunder rumbled in the distance. She didn't know yet that the storm had only just begun. Chapter 4. Spring crept in quietly that year, soft and almost apologetic. The city thawed, trees budding with hesitant green, the air sweet with rain. For the first time in months, Mira could breathe without her chest tightening. After Celeste's breakdown, Mira had decided consciously, stubbornly to build a life that wasn't defined by betrayal. She started small. New curtains for the apartment. A second-hand crib, its paint slightly chipped. Lavender candles that filled the air with something like calm. Every morning she walked to the park nearby, a thermos of ginger tea in hand. The sun on her face felt like permission to begin again. Sometimes, she'd sit on a bench and read aloud to the baby, her voice steady and warm. You'll love stories, she'd whisper. Because stories always find a way to survive, just like people do. There were days she missed Damien so sharply it felt physical. But grief had dulled into something gentler, now a scar instead of an open wound. One evening, as she folded baby blankets, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Mira, it's Damien. Her breath caught. For a full minute she just stared at the screen, unsure if it was real. I know you don't owe me anything. I just wanted to know you're okay. She hesitated, then typed back, I'm fine. Hope you are too. She almost left it there, but something in her heart tugged. I saw the photo. The delivery job. A pause. Then, yeah. It's not glamorous. But I'm trying. She didn't know what to say to that. Part of her wanted to scream, you left me. But another part, quieter, remembered how tired he'd looked in that photo. Take care of yourself, she finally sent. I will, came the reply. Congratulations, by the way. Her eyes blurred. He knew. She didn't ask how. Some things didn't need explaining. In the weeks that followed, their messages became sporadic. Nothing deep, weather updates, the occasional photo of the city skyline, a brief hope you're resting enough. It wasn't love. It wasn't closure. But it was human, and that was enough for now. Mira began to feel stronger. Her doctor said the pregnancy was healthy, her baby's heartbeat steady. She joined prenatal yoga classes, made cautious friendships, learned to cook new things just for herself. Sometimes she'd sit by the window at dusk, watching couples walk by hand in hand, and feel a pang of loneliness. Then the baby would kick, and she'd smile through her tears. You and me, she'd whisper. That's enough. The night it happened began quietly. Rain slicked the streets, blurring the world into watercolor shades. Mira was making tea when her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Lin, a voice said. This is St. Jude's Hospital. We have a patient named Damien Kwan who listed you as an emergency contact. Her heart stopped. What happened? He was in an accident. A car hit his motorbike. He's stable, but we'd appreciate it if someone could come. For a moment, she couldn't move. Then she grabbed her coat and ran. Hospitals always smelled like antiseptic and quiet fear. Mira stood at the reception desk, trembling. Damien Kwan, she said. Where is he? The nurse pointed her to a corridor. Room 312. He's sedated but conscious. When she stepped inside, her throat closed. He was pale, hooked up to machines, his arm bandaged, bruises painting his face in shades of purple and gray. For a moment, all the anger she'd been holding vanished. She sat beside the bed, fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. You idiot, she whispered. You absolute idiot. His eyelids fluttered. Mira. I'm here, she said softly. Don't try to talk. But he smiled faintly. You came. Of course I did. Her voice trembled. You scared me. I didn't think you'd want to see me again. I didn't, she said honestly. But that doesn't mean I wanted you gone forever. He turned his head, shame flickering in his eyes. I was trying to fix things. I thought if I just worked hard enough you could come back a hero, she interrupted. You left me, Damien. You don't get to rewrite that. He closed his eyes. I know. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the sound of his monitor beeping steadily. Myra's anger rose and fell like a tide. Resentment and relief, pain and pity tangled so tightly she couldn't separate them. Finally, she reached out and brushed a damp strand of hair from his forehead. Rest. We'll talk when you're stronger. He looked at her as if he wanted to say something more, but sleep pulled him under again. Outside, rain poured in silver sheets. Mira stood beneath the hospital awning, hugging herself. She should have felt peace, knowing he was alive. But all she felt was exhaustion of loving someone who never stayed, of forgiving what should have been unforgivable. Still, as she placed her hand on her belly, she whispered, he's alive. That has to count for something. In the distance, thunder rolled softly, like the sky exhaling. That night, she couldn't sleep. The image of Damien in that bed haunted her, his bruised hands, the faint tremor in his voice when he said her name. And beneath all the pain, buried deep and fragile, something stirred again. Not love exactly. Not yet. But maybe the ghost of it. Chapter 5. The hospital became part of Myra's routine. She visited Damien every other day, sometimes with fruit, sometimes with silence. The nurses learned her name. They smiled softly when she walked past, as if they knew her story and wished they didn't. Damien healed slowly. His ribs mended, the bruises faded, but his eyes remained shadowed. There were things he wanted to say but couldn't. Guilt sat in the space between them like a third person. One afternoon, he asked quietly, how's the baby? She's fine, Mira said. Stronger than both of us, probably. He smiled, faint and aching. You decided it's a girl? I just know. He looked down at his bandaged hand. I wanted to be there, he said. When she's born. I was saving money, trying to clear the mess I made. But someone kept undoing everything. Mira frowned. What do you mean? He hesitated. Investors pulled out of my startup overnight. Accounts drained. It didn't feel random. Someone wanted me gone. Her heart clenched. You think it was Celeste? Damien didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, Mira sat awake long after the lights went out, the city glowing faintly through her curtains. She replayed her last conversation with Celeste, the hollow laughter, the bitterness, the bruises she'd tried to hide. It didn't add up. Celeste was reckless, yes. But calculated sabotage? That wasn't the friend who once held her hand through heartbreak, who used to braid her hair while gossiping about film stars. And yet, the forged signatures, the loans, the lies. The pieces were there, jagged and cruel. The next morning, Mira called an old acquaintance, an accountant who'd worked with Damien during his business days. Can you check something for me? She asked, voice low. Celeste Wu. I think she was involved in his accounts. By evening, she had her answer. Yes, the man said over the phone. She was authorized to handle some of the company's finances. But get this, 3 days before Damien filed bankruptcy, large transfers went through from his account to hers. Then everything disappeared. Myra's blood went cold. How much? Almost everything he had left. Celeste didn't answer her calls. So Mira went to her apartment, a modern high-rise that smelled faintly of stale perfume and dust. She knocked once. Twice. Finally, the door cracked open. Celeste stood there, eyes bloodshot, mascara smudged. You shouldn't be here. We need to talk. There's nothing to say. Mira pushed past her. You ruined him. Celeste laughed hoarsely. He ruined himself. Don't lie to me. Something in Myra's tone made Celeste flinch. She sank onto the couch, clutching a half-empty glass of wine. The apartment was chaos, papers everywhere, clothes strewn, a life unraveling. I did what I had to, Celeste said finally. He promised me a partnership. Then he ghosted me. Left me broke. So I took what I could before the ship sank. You forged my name. You left him with nothing. You nearly destroyed his life. Celeste stared into her glass. You still love him. That's not the point. It's always the point. Myra's chest tightened. He wasn't innocent. But he didn't deserve this. Celeste's voice softened, weary. Neither did I. They sat in silence, the only sound the rain tapping the window. Finally, Mira asked, do you ever feel sorry? Celeste gave a small, broken laugh. Every day. But guilt doesn't pay rent. Mira stood. Then maybe redemption will. She placed an envelope on the table. Damien's financial records, evidence she'd gathered. If you still have a conscience left, fix this. Tell the truth. Celeste looked up sharply. You think I can just undo it? I think you can try, Mira said. Before it's too late. A week later, Damien was discharged. He walked slowly, leaning on a cane, but there was color in his face again. Mira met him outside the hospital gates. He gave her a shy smile. You didn't have to come. Someone had to make sure you didn't trip on your ego again. He chuckled, wincing slightly. Still funny, even now. As they crossed the parking lot, she told him everything: Celeste's confession, the bank transfers, the possibility of recovery if she came forward. He stopped walking. Why are you doing this for me? Because hating you hurts more than helping you, she said simply. And because one of us has to grow up. Damien stared at her, something raw flickering behind his eyes. You really haven't changed. I have, she said. You just don't recognize me anymore. That evening, Mira received a text from an unknown number. It's done. No name, but she knew it was Celeste. 2 days later, news broke: a confession letter sent anonymously to the local business board, accompanied by financial proof. Damien's bankruptcy was officially under review. He might never get his company back, but at least his name would be cleared. When Mira told him, he didn't speak for a long time. Then, quietly, you saved me again. She shook her head. No. Celeste did that. Maybe in the only way she knew how. He looked down, jaw tightening. I don't know if I can forgive her. Then don't, Mira said. Forgive yourself first. He nodded slowly, as if tasting the words. That night, Mira sat by her window, tea cooling beside her. The city was still, blanketed in early summer heat. She thought about Celeste somewhere out there, maybe packing up her life, maybe drowning her regret in another glass of wine. She thought about Damien, trying to rebuild from ruins. And she thought about herself, the woman who had somehow survived it all without turning to stone. When the baby kicked, she smiled through sudden tears. You see, little one? Even the worst people can surprise you. She leaned back, eyes closing. For the first time in a long while, peace didn't feel fragile. It felt earned. But somewhere deep inside, a whisper of unease remained, a sense that this calm wouldn't last, that life had one more turn waiting just ahead. Chapter 6. The first invitation arrived in gold foil. Mira almost threw it out, thinking it was another promotional flyer. But the embossed seal caught her eye: Langston Media Group. Inside was a note written in perfect, slanted handwriting. Ms. Lin, your story has inspired more people than you know. I'd like to discuss opportunities that could benefit your future and your child's. Dinner. Thursday, 8 p.m. Victor Langston. She stared at it, confused. She hadn't spoken publicly about her life, not yet. But she'd written a few articles online: reflections on perseverance, motherhood, and rebuilding after loss. Maybe that's how he'd found her. Still, the name stirred something uneasy in her. Langston. She remembered it faintly. Damien once mentioned the family, powerful investors with deep connections. Don't ever owe them favors, he'd said. They collect in blood. And yet, curiosity tugged at her. The restaurant glowed with soft candlelight and quiet wealth. Mira felt out of place in her simple navy dress, clutching her purse as a waiter led her to a private booth. Victor Langston stood to greet her. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s perhaps, handsome in a way that drew attention without asking for it. His suit was tailored, his smile easy. But there was calculation behind his charm, the kind that measured people the moment they walked in. Mira Lin, he said warmly. You're even more graceful in person. Flattery's a strange way to start a business meeting, she replied. He laughed softly. Straight to the point. I like that. He ordered wine, she asked for sparkling water. The conversation began politely: her background, her writing, the struggles of single motherhood. He listened with rapt attention, eyes sharp, almost too focused. You have a rare quality, he said after a while. The public loves authenticity. And pain, when told beautifully, sells. Mira frowned. You think pain is a commodity? He leaned back, swirling his glass. Everything is, if you package it right. You've lived through something extraordinary. I can help you turn it into power. There it was, the first glimpse of the trap behind the velvet. What exactly are you offering? She asked. Representation. Sponsorship. Media deals. You could write your story, host a podcast, maybe even a documentary. Langston Media has the reach. I have the influence. And in return? He smiled slowly. Loyalty. Exclusivity. You'd work only through me. Mira hesitated. That sounds restrictive. It's security, he countered. You've spent years surviving. Isn't it time you started living? His words were honeyed, heavy with persuasion. But something in her gut twisted. She'd built her fragile peace from independence, to hand it over now felt wrong. I'll think about it, she said. Victor reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers just long enough to make her flinch. Do. But don't take too long. The world moves fast. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She replayed the evening in her mind the way Victor spoke, his smile, the slight threat behind his kindness. The next morning, her assistant Lena arrived at the apartment, breathless. You won't believe who called me. Victor Langston, Mira guessed. Lena's eyes widened. How did you know? He wants to represent me. Lena bit her lip. He offered me money. Mira froze. What? To convince you. He said it would secure my position, maybe get me promoted. I told him no, obviously, but. Mira, this man doesn't take rejection well. Mira sat down slowly. He tried to buy your loyalty. Yes. Lena hesitated. He's dangerous, isn't he? Not dangerous, Mira said softly. Just used to getting what he wants. A week passed. Victor's calls continued smooth, polite, persistent. When she stopped answering, he sent gifts, white orchids, a diamond bracelet, even a silver rattle for the baby. Each delivery made her skin crawl a little more. Then one evening, as she returned from a prenatal appointment, she found a sleek black car parked outside her building. The window rolled down. Victor's voice drifted out. Mira. You've been avoiding me. She gripped her keys. I told you I'd think about your offer. It's been a week. I needed space. He smiled faintly. I could offer you so much more than space. Her pulse quickened. I'm not interested. He stepped out of the car, his tone still gentle but his eyes colder. You're making a mistake. People who walk away from opportunity don't always get a second chance. That sounds like a threat. Just a reminder. Before she could reply, another voice cut through the tension. She said she's not interested. Mira turned. Damien stood at the entrance of the building, bruises faint, posture stiff, but gaze unwavering. Victor's smile didn't falter. And you must be the infamous X. I've heard stories. Then you know how this ends, Damien said quietly. Walk away. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Victor slipped his hands into his pockets and laughed softly. You're both interesting. I'll be seeing you. He got back into his car and drove off. Inside the apartment, Mira sank onto the couch, trembling. You shouldn't have come. I saw his car. I figured you could use backup, Damien said. She looked at him, half angry, half relieved. You barely recovered, and you're playing hero again? I couldn't let him corner you. She pressed her palms to her face. Everything I touch turns into chaos. No, he said quietly. Everything you touch turns into a fight worth having. She looked up, startled. There was no bitterness in his voice, just quiet admiration. Thank you, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You can thank me by locking your door from now on. As the night deepened, Mira sat by the window, watching the streetlights blur against the rain. The world had changed again, one moment of peace replaced by another war she didn't ask for. But this time, she wasn't running. This time, she knew her worth. Chapter 7. The storm outside the window hadn't stopped all night. Rain whispered against the glass, steady and soft, the kind of sound that made people talk about things they'd been avoiding. Mira sat curled up on the couch, her robe pulled tight around her, a mug of untouched tea cooling beside her knee. Across from her, Damien leaned against the wall, the lamplight catching the faint scar on his jaw. He looked worn, thinner, quieter, but there was something steadier in his gaze now, like the wild edges of him had finally burned out. You really shouldn't have gotten involved, she said at last. Victor could have ruined you. Damien gave a small, humorless smile. He already tried. His family pulled out of my last business deal before everything collapsed. Guess he never forgot. Mira blinked. So you knew him before? Barely. He's the kind of man who collects people like coins. I was young, arrogant, thought I could impress him. Turns out I was just another investment that didn't pay off. Silence stretched between them. The sound of rain filled the room. I didn't want you dragged back into this, she said softly. He shrugged. Too late. I've been in it from the moment I met you. Something inside her twisted anger, affection, confusion, all tangled together. You left, Damien. You can't just show up again like none of it happened. His shoulders slumped. I know. Myra's voice broke before she could stop it. You abandoned me when I needed you most. Do you have any idea what that felt like? To wake up every day wondering what I did wrong? He looked at her, eyes glinting with guilt. It wasn't you. It was me falling apart and being too much of a coward to admit it. I couldn't give you the life you deserved, and I thought stupidly that leaving would hurt less than watching you watch me fail. News flash, she said bitterly. It didn't hurt less. He winced. I know. I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. The words hung there, simple and raw. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then, almost despite herself, Mira asked, why save me tonight? He hesitated. Because I couldn't stand seeing someone else try to control you. I did enough of that in my own way. And because. He met her eyes. Because I still care. More than I should. She wanted to tell him to stop, to take that confession and swallow it, but the truth was, her heart ached at the sound of it. I don't know what to do with that, she whispered. Don't do anything, he said softly. Just let me try to make things right. Not for us, just for you. Mira looked down at her hands. You always say the right thing too late. He nodded, accepting the blow. Better late than never? She almost smiled. Almost. The following days blurred into cautious rhythm. Damien stayed nearby, helping when she needed it, carrying groceries, fixing a broken faucet, driving her to doctor appointments. He never pushed, never demanded space in her life. He was just there, quiet and consistent. One afternoon, they stopped by a lakeside park after a checkup. The air smelled of wet grass and sunlight. Mira walked slowly along the path, her belly round beneath her loose sweater. Damien followed a few steps behind, hands in his pockets. I used to come here when I was a kid, he said. My dad taught me to fish right over there. I caught one once, tiny thing, and he made me throw it back. Said everything deserved another chance. She glanced at him, a soft smile playing on her lips. Even people? He met her gaze. Especially people. Mira looked away, watching a family of ducks glide across the water. The sunlight shimmered on the surface, and for the first time in months, she felt a little less heavy. You're trying hard, she said quietly. I'm not sure it's enough. It's something. He exhaled, a mix of relief and sadness. You don't owe me anything, Mira. I just want to be the kind of person you can forgive someday. Forgiveness isn't a gift, she murmured. It's a slow climb. Then I'll keep climbing. The words shouldn't have made her heart swell, but they did. She turned toward him, really seeing him, tired eyes, trembling hands, but steady in his quiet sincerity. Maybe broken things could still be useful, still capable of warmth. That evening, he walked her up to her apartment. She lingered at the door, unsure whether to thank him or tell him to leave before she said something she'd regret. Good night, he said finally. Try to get some rest. She hesitated. Do you want to come in? Just for tea. His eyebrows lifted, surprise flickering across his face. You sure? It's just tea, she said, though even to her ears it sounded unconvincing. Inside, the air felt heavy with unspoken things. He sat at the table, hands wrapped around his mug, and for a while they just existed, two people trying to remember how to share silence without pain. Do you ever wish we could start over? She asked suddenly. He looked up. Every day. She swallowed. I don't know if I could survive losing you again. Then I'll make sure you won't have to. His voice was low, steady, like a promise he intended to keep this time. The baby kicked, and Mira gasped softly, resting her hand on her stomach. Damien's eyes softened. Can I? She nodded, and he reached out, fingers trembling as he touched the curve of her belly. When the baby moved again, he laughed, quiet, breathless. Hey there, little one. I'm your idiot dad. Mira smiled despite herself. At least you know it. Self-awareness counts for something, right? She chuckled, shaking her head. We'll see. They stayed like that for a moment, her hand over his, the rain easing outside, the world pausing just long enough for something small and healing to take root. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. And for Mira, beginnings were enough.